Hi, I'm Amy and this is A-Star Reads, and I'm gonna do something new today. I'm really excited about this actually. So I have been struggling to get wrap-ups done. As you've probably seen, I never did a May or June wrap-up. Those particular videos are really daunting for me. I tend to do a lot of planning for those ones because I want to make sure I get all the points across that I need to talk about. And I find that my memory is crap. So what I thought I would do instead is that I decided I'm gonna do Sunday sum-ups, basically summarizing the week prior. And I've been seeing a lot of people doing their weekly reads, which I like the idea of because it seems a lot less daunting. And what I'm gonna do each week is actually do my review after I finish the book. So even though you see me as I am right now, when I talk about my reviews, I will be in different clothing and forms because I'm just going to take that snippet from when I actually reviewed it and put it in this video. So I want to do a really quick shout out to Katya from Read, Write, Create because she was the first person that I saw really embracing this weekly update sort of video. I'm sure other people have been doing it, but hers was the first one that I noticed and was thinking that might be a good idea for me. But I'd also like to shout out to Melanie from Completely Melanie because she does her wrap-ups where she reviews the book right after she finishes it and then puts it all together for a final month-end wrap-up. And I'm basically going to be using that idea where I review the book right after reading it and then put the film footage together so it makes a video at the end of the week. And that way I get the most up-to-date opinion on my book. I can talk more about it in detail because I had just finished it and I won't forget everything. So that's good, right? Because this memory is not what it used to be. So I've got a drink. We're gonna see how this goes. What I also want to do to get caught up with May and June is that in each of these Sunday sum-ups, at least until I get through all the books, I'm gonna add 3 of the previous books that I had read. So today I'll talk about the first 3 books I read in May. And then also, July has been a really busy month so far. The first week and a half were crazy for me, and I just kind of want to show you guys what I've been up to. You know, we're summing up what's going on, and I didn't vlog during those periods, so I'll give you little snippets of what kind of shenanigans I've been getting up to recently in between each of the reviews. Completed Malibu Rising. And I'm not going to talk about this one briefly because a lot of people are talking about it. And I decided while I was reading it that at the time I felt 3.25 stars because I was not connecting with the characters. But I also realized that at that time, I didn't really give the book a fair chance. So I'm not going to talk about that book here because I'm going to reread it at some point, and I will talk about it with a full review at that time. So the second book that I finished in May was Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. And as you can imagine, I gave this one 5 stars. It actually wasn't a reread for me because I have only ever watched the adaptations, but it was very close, especially the BBC miniseries version of Pride and Prejudice. And so I felt like I was reading an old favorite. Having read some of Jane Austen's other books recently, it was one of her more innocent stories actually, because a lot of her characters in some of her other books are more cynical and sinister and a little hard around the edges. Whereas in Pride and Prejudice, everybody felt so clean and fresh and bright, even though they were cynical as well. And you know, there was the whole concept of Pride and Prejudice and stuff. But for some reason, this one feels so much more young and youthful and lively and bright. I don't know how to explain that. This one is one of the most sweet of her books. What I thought was funny though was that I was actually really irritated by Elizabeth Bennet through a good portion of Pride and Prejudice, whereas I really liked her in the adaptations. In this, I was like, man, you're annoying. She was so annoying until a certain point when you really start liking her. But even Jane was not as enjoyable of a character in the book as I had felt for her during the adaptations. So that was fascinating. Mr. Collins, Mrs. Bennet still tend to be my favorite characters because they're the most annoying, and I find that Mrs. Bennet is a character choice that Jane Austen uses a lot all throughout her books. She really likes creating a character that is annoying, frustrating, shallow, and really only about looks and appearances, and just clueless, absolutely clueless. She has so many characters like this, and I think it's funny. I'm guessing it says a lot about Jane Austen and her experience in society at the time she was alive. So it was fun. The story is about the Bennet family. The Bennet sisters are 5 girls who their father has not provided for their future. They don't have a brother, and their livelihood is going to be entailed away to their cousin, Mr. Collins. And that is a problem because they have to marry rich. If they don't marry rich, then they're not going to have anything. So it's mostly about Elizabeth Bennet, who is the second eldest daughter, and she meets this guy named Mr. Darcy, who is totally rich and snobby, and she can't stand him and he can't stand her. So they're fighting constantly, and yet something is kindling there. And then of course the oldest daughter, Jane, she's kind of the second main character of the story. Jane is just sweet and kind and lovely, and she's fallen for Mr. Bingley, who has fallen for her as well. But of course, things aren't that simple because they can't be. As all of Jane Austen's books are, it's a look at society during the, what is this? I think there's like the late 1700, early 1800 period, and what's expected of you from society, in what class you're in, who you're supposed to marry, the lack of freedom that women had because they had to marry, because if they didn't, they wouldn't have anything to live off of later in their life, or if they did, it would be much below what their class entailed. So it's an interesting story with a lot of fantastic characters. I mean, I think that these are some of my favorite characters in Jane Austen's novels. I give it a 5 stars. I don't know if it is really a 5-star for me. Is this book a 4.75, 4.5? It could be, but because it's so iconic and because I love the story in general so much, it bumps it up to a 5 stars for me. So, Pride and Prejudice, my second book in May. So the third book that I finished in May was a NetGalley arc, and this was True Rescue, The Finest Hours, The True Story of a Heroic Sea Rescue by Michael J. Tougias and Casey Sherman. So this was actually a middle grade nonfiction, and I was curious about it because I will be teaching younger kids, and I like nonfiction anyways. So I haven't read too many middle grade nonfictions, and I wanted to see what this one was all about. It obviously has a very specific audience because this is about a rescue mission. There were 2 oil tankers, and it was off the shore of Cape Cod. They got into some really horrible weather. I mean, this was one of the worst storms in Cape Cod. And both of these oil tankers, both of them, completely broke in half. Something about this model of oil tanker was flawed. And so this is the rescue mission for these oil tankers. And you're looking at it from a perspective of like 3 different characters. And I guess the authors of this not only interviewed them, but looked at like records and whatnot. So it has a pretty detailed account of the stories of these people, as well as there's quite a few facts about specific things. Like there's facts about the ocean in this area. There's facts about the type of tankers. I thought this book was okay. I gave it 3.25. I could see that there would be a specific audience for this and that some middle grade students would really enjoy this, depending on their area of interest. It wasn't as exciting in parts as I thought it would be. Not that we should say that having to be rescued because oil tankers are falling apart should be exciting, but it's kind of played as like this exciting, heroic adventure. You're given a lot of facts and details, and I felt the way it was written was a little slow-paced. So, not terrible. I did enjoy it. I would keep a copy of this in my classroom because I feel like some kids would really enjoy this. It's not for everybody.
Try to think.
It's a video. Okay, so the fourth book that I read in May was Ayesha at Last by Uzma Jalaluddin. I loved this book. I gave it a 4.5 stars. I thought it was fantastic. I had so much fun with this because it came at a time when I needed a lighthearted young adult romance book, and it really gave me everything I was hoping for. This is a retelling of Pride and Prejudice. So I read it for the Down Memory Jane read along, and it was the book I read after Pride and Prejudice. So we read a couple of those, and it was a lot of fun because you're getting a different perspective. So this one's a Muslim perspective from a family that I think lives in Toronto, Canada. It's about this woman named Ayesha, and she is a poet, and she loves doing poetry. That's all she wants to do. Because of some family situations, she feels like she's really in debt to her uncle and her uncle's family. So she knows that she needs to work. And so she's become a teacher, and she's teaching at a high school, and this job isn't for her. She doesn't love it. So one of the things that Ayesha is dealing with, though, is that her family is trying to set up Hafsa, her cousin, with an arranged marriage. And this is an element to their community that Ayesha doesn't really agree with anymore. Her mom wouldn't force her to do it. She's really not expected to do it, but she's kind of expected to help her cousin Hafsa. And unfortunately, because her cousin Hafsa is a little pain in the butt, she throws Ayesha into some situations that force her to be in the company of this guy named Khalid. And Khalid is this incredibly conservative Muslim man who is very naive, has not had a lot of experience in life, and he lives with his mother, and he's basically under his mother's thumb. And people make fun of him because he dresses conservatively and he does everything his mother says. But he's also very judgmental. He's very judgmental, and when he meets Ayesha and she meets him, he just sees all the bad things about her, and she sees all the bad things about him. And the two of them, just like in Pride and Prejudice, cannot get along. So they're like Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy. The fun thing about this one, though, and that I really enjoyed, was the chemistry between Ayesha and Khalid. It was incredible. I haven't read chemistry like this in a book in a very long time. And granted, this is a very light romance. This is not smutty in the least. And yet the chemistry between these two is some of the steamiest, wonderful chemistry. And you're only getting it through the way they look at each other, the way they feel around each other. And yet I loved it. It was perfect for me at the time. I would absolutely go back and read this again. One of the complaints people had about it, though, was that it was a little too busy. There were a lot of things going on in this story. There were a lot of side stories, a lot of little elements that came in through the family, through Khalid, through Ayesha. And of course, you always have to have a Wickham character. So there's a Wickham character in here that brings drama as well. So there's a lot going on, and I can see that, and I can agree with it somewhat. I also know that Pride and Prejudice itself has a ton of little side stories and different things happening all the time. I had so much fun reading it that it didn't really matter. So 4.5 stars for Ayesha at Last. And that's the last book that I'm going to talk about that I read in May. I will talk about more of the books I read in May in my next Sunday Sum Up. But now let's go to the books that I have read in July so far. So this is more than this past week, but not much more because I haven't read that many books in July. So I'm going to catch us up through the full month of July up to this point, and then next week I will start with just doing the weekly updates. I got around the whole buying books ban because Mom bought them for me.
Oh, that's how it happened.
And she's carrying them for me too. I don't know what's going on here.
I needed exercise.
Okay, so it's the 15th and I have finally finished my first book for July. I've been reading some pretty long books, so it hasn't been going the best, but I finished The Future of the Mind by Michio Kaku, And I don't think I can really give you a rating for this one. I struggled a lot with this. It's taken me a long time to get through the audiobook. And then it was also kind of a mistake to read this book right now. What I needed after school was finished was to give my brain a rest, and this book is very technical. I typically like that. I love science nonfiction. This isn't necessarily the area of science nonfiction I'm most fond of. That being said, I didn't really have a choice because it was the book that was picked for my nonfiction book club, my real life nonfiction book club for this month. I was forcing myself to read this. I didn't hate it in any way, but there was a lot of this book I listened to, but it went in one ear out the other. Is talking about the future of the mind and the future of science. There was a lot of futurism in this book. Robots, telepathy, and telekinesis in ways that are done scientifically, and all these ideas that could be done in the future based off current science or what we are being able to do or coming to be able to do. There were some really interesting sections that I enjoyed that were more about like mental health and different physical disabilities. Those sections were really interesting. I enjoyed learning more about the science behind those, and I also really enjoyed hearing about advancements that are not necessarily fix these issues, but make it so that there's better treatments for it and maybe at some point fix them. And then also there was a big section on people who are quadriplegic and the future of being able to control things with their mind, being able to use computers and type and stuff using just their mind. So there's a lot of advancement in that area, which was really interesting to find out about. And then there was a section that was all about aliens and like life on other planets and trying to understand what that might look like. And that whole section I was really interested in because I'm very interested in the concept of other life forms and what forms that could take, and the concept that we are actually going to be on some similar level to these other life forms so that we'll be able to understand them or they'll even be interested in us. The futurism stuff I'm not always interested in. I did enjoy the sections that were more about ethics because I love ethics of science. I don't know, for some reason I've always thought ethics were fascinating when it comes to science. There have been so many situations in the past where we have done things because we're like, oh, look what we can do. We have this incredible technology, and we don't find out till later that it was a problem. Like, we shouldn't have just done that. So I'm always interested in anything having to do with ethics. And of course, when it comes to futurism and all these crazy ideas like telekinesis, telepathy, what kind of ethical dilemmas are there going to be? There was a huge section about AI and all the advancements that can come along with that. But I think a lot of people are really frightened about, the whole concept of the robots can take over the planet. Looking at how that would work, that kind of manufacturing process, but then also what kind of laws would have to be put into place for AI or owners of AI? What kind of limitations can the AI have? So it was fascinating. It just shouldn't have read it audiobook. Ended up just being what had to happen. And I shouldn't have read it right now. It's not the book I should have read right now. Okay, so I just finished Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. Finished this on the 18th of the month. This was my second book of the month to have read. And so I wanted to give you a quick review of this one. I'm gonna give it probably a 3.75. I really enjoyed it. As I was reading it, I was like, man, this would be a great screenplay. This would be a great screenplay. And so I'm really excited to actually watch the show because the whole time I was reading it, I was like, this would do better as a TV show or a movie. I really felt like this would be perfect as a TV show or movie. And I think because it didn't have too much of a plot, I know that the plot is that Armageddon is coming and there is a demon and an angel. They're working together to try to stop Armageddon because they've lived on Earth for 6,000 years and they've realized, oh, I like living on Earth. I like people. I don't want to see this all end. That is basically what the plot is, and then you're meeting the Antichrist who's supposed to bring about Armageddon. You meet the four horsemen of the apocalypse, which I loved those characters. I really liked those characters. They were a lot of fun. I loved Aziraphale, who is the angel, and Crowley, who is the demon. I liked all the characters, and I enjoyed so much of the humor. It was a lot of fun. It kind of reminded me of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. The humor was in that vein, which I love The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's something that I really, really enjoy. It's the type of humor that I found really fun. I found the details of this to be hilarious. All the little mentions and the jokes, some of them I didn't quite get because, it depends on your own level of pop culture, what you know about history or reading or what have you. So of course there's going to be things in here that I won't necessarily get because I don't necessarily know what they're referencing. And so I guess the only reason why I didn't feel like it was a 4 or 5 star for me, and maybe on a reread it would be a 4 star, was that this book actually had a really hard time keeping my interest. I was interested in the sections I was reading as I was reading it, but I had no problem putting it down. I had to be in the mood to read it. So if I was tired or if I had other things to distract me, I could easily put this down and, pick it up at some other point. And so I probably will end up watching the show fairly soon. And I think once I do that, I'll give you an update on one of my Sunday sum-ups and let you know how I felt about it, because I have this feeling that I'm going to love the show more than the book. And I know that doesn't happen very often, but this just feels like it would be perfect in TV show or movie form. I also just realized that I forgot to tell you about my Summertime Reads Readathon, how this fulfills the prompts. And I'm also realizing that all the books that I had already planned on reading for Summertime Reads Readathon, I might not get to because, today is the 19th and this is my second book being read this month. So I'm gonna try and fulfill as many of the prompts as possible with the books I read going forward. So this one works for backyard barbecue, food on the cover, and this one also works for off to summer camp, which is read a book set outside. Some of the main parts of this book, especially some of the more pivotal scenes, are set outside. And throughout this book, most sections talk about the sky and how there's a storm a-brewing, or there's the clouds are going crazy, or there's lightning and thunder. And there's so much weather spoken of in this because weather's a big indicator for the apocalypse. It's coming, and you can tell through looking at the sky. Fulfills 2 of my prompts, and hopefully I'll be able to fulfill all the prompts through the other books I'm going to be reading in the next, until I can make it through the end of the month. Hi, okay, it is the 20th of July and I have finished my 3rd book, Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. As far as ratings go, I think I'm kind of a 4.25 for this one. I really, really enjoyed it. Kind of like how I felt about Strange a Dreamer. I almost wish this was an adult book. I mean, granted, it was a very mature young adult book, but there are certain books, certain stories that I just want to see done. This was so beautiful, so well done, but I wanted it to be a little deeper, a little darker, a little more complex. I really liked the conversations around Bree's ancestry and how her life is and continues to be affected by slavery and discrimination throughout her whole life. This was so compelling, and that element to the story was incredible. The King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table component of this was really well done. The ending is incredible. There was so much about this that I really enjoyed and loved. But there were some parts that I wanted a little more emotion from, some deaths and things that happened that I kind of was like, I didn't quite capture all the emotion in those moments. And yet there were other moments in this that I captured a lot of emotions. There were definitely parts that made me cry quite a bit. So I felt like the focus on the characters sometimes was really there and really amazing. And sometimes I wanted a little more. I think that was one of the things. And then the other thing was I kind of wanted this as an adult novel. I don't know why, but there are certain books that are really good, but I would love them even more if they had been written to be adult books. And that's how I felt about Stranger Dreamer. And that's kind of how I feel about Legendborn. But that being said, 4.25 is really high, and I did love this book, and I cannot wait to read the next one, especially considering where we ended off in this book. I need to think about this one some more because I just finished it, and I have to take it back to the library, so I don't really have too much time to think about it before giving it a review. But I will be doing a live show on this with Antonisha from Mrs. Moody Reader, and I'm really excited about that. I'm excited that it's at the end of the month, so I have like 10 days to kind of think about how I'm feeling about this book overall and, think about it a little more deeply, because then we're going to talk about it. I can't wait to hear what Antonisha thinks and has to say about it. So I'm really excited about doing the live show, and you should come and join if you've read this book. It's going to be spoiler heavy, so if you haven't read it, I'm not sure it's the best place to go for information. As far as the Summertime Reads Readathon, I'm going to count this for 2 prompts. Summertime Sunsets, read a book with red, yellow, orange, or something like that on the cover, and this one clearly has red. It also works for Late Night Fireworks, which is read a book that you are excited about. I have been excited to read Legendborn for a while now, and I'm excited to read the second one. It looks like the second one's not supposed to come out until 2022, so I guess we have to wait. Wait, I think this one came out this year, didn't it? So I guess I should be patient, right? Because 2022 is just next year. Gosh, I can't believe how fast time is going. July 22nd, and I have finally finished my 4th book for the month. It's The Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb, so obviously this 809-page book was gonna take me a while. I loved this. I'm gonna give this 5 stars. I know that it's not necessarily the most thrilling book. A lot of people have said that it was too slow, and they said it was boring, but I didn't... It was just one of those books that I enjoyed from one end to the other. I loved picking this book up. I loved every chance I got to read it. I didn't allow myself to feel too rushed because I wanted to enjoy this. I had been looking forward to reading The Lifeship Traders ever since I started reading Robin Hobb, and it's exactly what I wanted from it. This had multiple POVs, whereas the Farseer trilogy, you follow Fitz. You're looking at everything from Fitz's perspective. And this one, you're following quite a few different characters. And some of them are not even main characters, but you're getting their perspective. And I really liked that. I loved the flaws in a lot of these characters. I loved seeing where their stories went because they were so flawed. There were also characters in here that you hated so much with a burning passion, a rage deep down inside that you wanted to either throw this book across the room or punch the faces of all these people, which is very aggressive. I don't punch anybody, but I was like, these characters. I love how Robin Hobb is able to make you feel so strongly about people, and even if it's a negative thing, because I don't hate very many people, but man, these are horrible people in this book. I love the setting, as I said before. I say it many, many times. You'll probably get sick of hearing me say it. I love books on ships. I love books set at sea. It's a setting that just does something for me. I was meant to be a captain of a boat or something, and I've missed my calling, unfortunately. And I don't think I've missed my calling for good. I will have a sailboat one day. Someday. When I'm like 60 or something, because then I'll maybe be able to afford it. Doubt it. But that being said, I can live vicariously through books like this. And I thought that the stories, the intertwining stories, the concepts were so rich and interesting, and it made me excited to read the next book because nothing gets resolved. Something gets slightly resolved, but really not much gets resolved in this. It is very slow moving in the sense that this book is a book of building characters. It's a book of building situations, and not a ton of action, but of the action that was there I enjoyed, but I didn't really need the action. Whereas in the Farseer trilogy, the last book, Assassin's Quest, I felt like there was a lack of action, which I needed for that book. Love that I'm continuing to read this series because I'm enjoying Robin Hobb's writing so much. It feels like coming home. It feels very comforting to me, which is crazy considering she is horrible to her characters. This book is very political in a lot of ways, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed seeing the interactions between different communities within this world. And you don't need to have read the Farseer trilogy to enjoy this, because although there's mentions of the Six Duchies, you don't actually go anywhere near the Six Duchies for this book. I'm so excited to read Matchup. I'm so excited to continue this adventure. I'm so excited to continue falling asleep with Robin Hobb every night, where she breaks my soul piece by piece. And I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying her just tearing me apart. Editing Amy here. I completely forgot to mention that Shell, Magda, and I will be doing a discussion of this coming up soon. I still need to put up the Assassin's Quest discussion that Shell and I did. But then Magda, Shell, and I will be talking about this. We will go into a lot more detail. I'll talk more about the synopsis of the book because I didn't really do that here. And we will go over spoilers. So if you haven't read the series, we'll try and start out with it being spoiler free, but then we're definitely going to go into spoilers because we want to get into this book. Teresa.
Hello, Teresa.
Okay, so now let's talk about the books that I'm currently reading, or what I'm currently doing. And I have started Outlander. I'm not very far in yet. I'm about 69 pages in. And so far, I don't know if it was like too soon to start this after finishing Ship of Magic or something, but I'm not quite ready to like really invest into this story yet. So in the meantime, I've picked up The Last Unicorn by Peter Beagle because I felt I needed something a little more light and easy to read, because this isn't hard to read, it's just a lot of information, and it's right now we're setting up the location, the story, what's going on, and I'm having a hard time engaging at the moment. So I will continue picking this up over the weekend. It's just that right now I'm like, you know what, let me pick up a nice little short, easy read that will kind of refresh my palate in a sense. I've also barely started The Mysteries of Udolpho by Anne Radcliffe, and this is a buddy read I'm doing with Bethanne Bruninga-Socolar, and I have only read very little of this. But I think I'm actually gonna like this. At least I'm liking the writing style so far, and it just feels like the kind of book I would enjoy reading at the moment. What I'll be reading next week, because next week is the Reading Sprints Readathon, and this is being hosted by Hannah over at Hannah's blog. I really like her channel. She's so much fun to watch. Her humor she cracks me up. She really does crack me up. And she's doing a 1-week readathon, which is very simple, and it's basically reading sprints, and all you really have to do is join in on the reading sprints, and I'm like, okay, that's great. But there are prompts, and I want to really quickly give you my TBR for next week. Prompt 1, read a book set in a country that you've never read about before. And so I'm going to be reading Crazy Rich Asians. This is set in Singapore. I don't think I've actually read any books that were set in Singapore before, so I think this works for that. Prompt number 2, read a book with a plant on the cover. I'll be reading The Passion, which is one of my Trash My TBR books, and this one has a flower on the cover, and it's nice and short. Prompt number 3, read a book that's under 200 pages. I plan on reading Searching for Marilyn Monroe by Pei Vio and The Passion by Jeanette Winterston. Prompt number 4, read a book while watching an ASMR ambient video. That's easy. I watch those rain videos all the time. I absolutely love them. Prompt number 5, read a book that's recently acquired. Both of these are recently acquired, so these count. Prompt number 6, read a book that is set in the future or the past. I know that both of these are set in the past. And prompt number 7, read a book during one of the summer sprint week reading sprints. Well, I will be doing that. I'll be joining Hannah's sprints. I know she has quite a few going up, and hopefully I'll be able to catch one of the ones that works for my time zone. So I was wrong about the name of the readathon. It's called the Summer Sprint Week Readathon. So I will link all you need to know about that down in the description box below. And that's it. That's my plans for the next week. So we'll see what ends up happening. I'm not stressing. Next weekend is going to be the start of my Gish, which is the greatest international scavenger hunt. So for a whole week, I will not be available to do anything. So I'll get one more Sunday sum up before Gish starts, but then I probably won't have one the week of Gish because we'll be focused on Gishing the whole time. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you can see what I plan on reading in August and more of my weekly sum ups. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you later. Bye.